Welcome to another episode of Actually, You Can. I'm your host, Myth, and for this episode, I had the absolute honour of interviewing none other than Chris Bond, father of two, dual world champion, dual Paralympic Gold Medalist, and the captain of the Australian Wheelchair Rugby Team, the Steelers. Look, I'll be real with you. When it comes to introducing Chris's episode, I'm at a loss for words. Chris is an inspiring human in every sense of the word, and if you've ever doubted the sheer impact of goals and finding your true purpose on the human spirit, then this episode is a must listen. My sincere hope is that this podcast is the catalyst you've been needing to finally take the time to understand what you value and to set and go after your big goals, because actually, you can. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show. It's so exciting to have you here.
Thanks, Miff. Yeah, great to be here from beautiful Sunshine Coast here in Queensland.
Before we jump in, if you wouldn't mind sharing in a couple of words, who is Chris Bond?
Who is Chris Bond? That's a great question. I think these days, I don't know, top tier is either father or captain, and I'm not sure what prevails at the moment. It seems like most of my time's in the father column, but I guess most Australians might know me as the captain of the Australian Steelers Wheelchair Rugby Team and current Paralympic athlete.
And so to understand how you got to be this version of Chris Bond today, I'm really keen to go back to 17 to 18-year-old Chris. What was life like for you back then?
Oh, very different, Myth. Lots of nights hanging out with your partner out in the town in Canberra and running amok and being a bit of a rat bag. And I think that's pretty much a rite of passage for a lot of 17, 18-year-olds sort of trying to find themselves after school and, introducing them to the wider world outside of where you live and, city life and nightlife and things like that. I 17, 18 would have been just finishing up college in year 11 and 12. And I remember I was working in the kitchen at Ridges Hotel as a cook. And just sort of, taking a year off after year 12 and just working there part-time and hanging out with mates and just seeing what life was going to happen, where it was going to lead me, I suppose, and taking a bit of a gap year.
Yeah, and what sort of goals did you have at that age? You mentioned you're going to take a gap year. What else is planned for Chris?
Not too much at that time. I think, the fact that it just finished schooling was a big milestone. I'd questioned whether I wanted to go to university, and I got the grades to do it, but I just didn't have a particular area I was really keen on to dedicate a lot of my life towards. So that's where I thought I've been working in the kitchen for a while. I'll just do this a bit more and just spend some time hanging out with friends and maybe traveling a bit. They all kind of got cut short out of my hands. But I do remember I was about to go for an interview for a regional manager position at the hotel. A day after I got sick, but did end up managing to get there.
And so let's talk about that in more detail. From what I understand, that happened when you were about age 19, and it happened pretty dramatically and pretty quickly. Are you able to share a bit more about what happened around that age of 19?
Yeah, no worries. So typical, 19-year-old, just finished school, into, fitness and, making sure my hair looked good and all that kind of thing. And chasing girls around, and, I was very fit and healthy, just sort of social drinker out of the town, didn't smoke or anything, played a lot of sports, like very sort of athletic build, rarely got sick. I don't think I'd ever been to a hospital except for maybe breaking my wrist in primary school, jumping off a tree. It was just so foreign to go to a doctor or anything for anything. And I was a bit crook. Took a week or so off work, then went back to work. And I remember I was in the kitchen, doing night shifts, and we're just about to put together a function. And I just wasn't feeling the best, and sort of said to my boss, "Hey, look, I'm not that well. I'd missed dinner. I wasn't even hungry. I thought it's just not me. Like, there's something going on." She just said, "Look, just go home and sleep it off." And I remember driving home from work, and I was almost like crashing my car. Like, I was swerving on the road. I was just like ill in the stomach and stabbing pains. It's like, what is going on? And a bit naive at that age. I think you're invincible, and didn't go to hospital or anything. I was just like, oh, I'll be right. I'll go home and sleep it off. So I got home and then, went to bed, and then all through the night I was up, sort of stabbing pains, diarrhea, throwing up, that kind of thing. And again, I was like, oh, it'll get better. I'll just lie down. And it didn't. And then, the next morning, everyone else in the household had gone to work. And I was sort of just clutching my guts on the floor, and just, it comes to a point, I think it was 2 PM. I was like, no, this is kind of too much now. The tough guy routine's gone. I gotta get some help or something, because this is really not right. And then I called my mum, and she organised someone to pick me up, take me to the doctor. By that stage, I could barely even walk. And the doctor said it was probably like appendicitis or something, because it sort of seemed like it was coming from my stomach, like real stabbing pains. And they rushed me to hospital. And then, the next thing I knew, got admitted fairly quickly. And then it seemed like only a few seconds. It was probably, a range of minutes, but they essentially just said, look, you have to ring your family, because we've got to go and operate on you. We don't like your chances of surviving. And then I sort of woke up, 4 or 5 days later, after an induced coma in ICU.
Wow. I mean, what a transformation since 18, thinking you're going to go on a gap year, to all of a sudden being in a hospital room, not knowing if you'll survive next operation, let alone knowing what's going to happen as your next step. What was going through your mind during that time when there's all this uncertainty about your health?
Yeah, it was pretty tough. Like, I guess that just demonstrates how quickly it came on. Like, within a day, I was sort of in a life-threatening situation. And at the time, it was just like, the only thing that's coming to my mind is what is happening. Like, this is so foreign to me to be sick, let alone in a hospital, and doctors are rushing me in, and I felt pretty bad, but as I didn't know that it was, life threatening essentially. And they said I had, I think around 50% chance to survive the initial operation, which was to open me up and have a look inside me. Because they thought, my body was going septic, which it was. So they put me under, and I went into cardiac arrest a couple of times. And then, my body was going septic, so they had to give me bloods, antibiotics. And they actually, when I woke up, they found out I had a rare cancer, an leukaemia, and also had a bad bacterial infection called necrotizing fasciitis, which is like a flesh-eating bacteria. So probably either of those on their own would be okay, but together, like, the cancer sort of stripped my immunity away, and I was so healthy that it just presented like a cold, symptoms. It took a while to actually harm me detrimentally, and then you add this sort of infection, it's just almost game over. And initially it was a shock, like, what is going on, and then I think it started to sink in after a few days in the ICU, and this had all happened, and I woke up and my body was black and I couldn't move, and all this kind of stuff, tubes down my throat. I was like, oh, this is actually real. And the novelty of oh, this is something new, exciting, I haven't been to a hospital, that kind of thing, wore off very quickly into, I can't see past this. Like, what is my life now? Am I going to survive this? And then beyond that, what's the quality of my life going to be? As a 19-year-old invincible, now you're literally at the mercy of something you don't understand. Yeah.
And so at what point did you really understand the significance of what you were going through and what the impact of this moment would have on you long term?
Yeah, I think it took a little while. Probably the first week or so was just, again, that sort of, this is all new, and a lot of friends and family came in, and that was kind of nice to have them around. And it was all a bit of a novelty at the start. Like, it's almost like a third person, like you're watching this happen to someone. And then I think the realization kicks in when you guess all that are left, and it's just you staring at a roof, not able to move, not able to feed yourself, go to the toilet or anything. Initially, with doctors saying you might not survive still. And it's just that kind of sinks in, like, wow, this is real, and I have to start to accept it. I think that was the hardest thing. And I definitely had moments where I was just like, no, I just want to give up. I don't want to do this. This isn't me. I don't identify as this. But there is no off switch to the human life. Unfortunately, it's going to do what it's going to do, involuntarily keep you alive, keep you kicking. And that's the beauty of being human, I guess. It's just around challenging your brain and mentally understanding that and getting on board together to move forward. And yeah, initially it was very, very, very tough mentally, but I think like if you fast forward, 12 months, with a lot of recovery in between that, I think day by day, incrementally getting better and feeling a bit better in myself, less sick, incrementally having very, very small goals to be able to move myself, to feed myself, all that kind of thing. And then ticking them off, changed my way of thinking. And then it was around, all right, well, slowly but surely I'm sort of getting better. I'm not going to sit in this bloody hospital bed for the rest of my life. So it was just like, all right, well, I can sort of see a bit of a light here. I'm going to chase that and wait till I get to the end, and then and see what this new life has to offer me, I suppose.
And so how did you make that transition from lying in the hospital bed being like, someone just flicked the switch, and thankfully that wasn't an option at the time, to going, hang on, I'm going to make the most of this and I can get through it by setting small goals? What was that flip of the switch for you?
It took a long time. Like I guess I just said it, fast forward 12 months, and a lot of that was very much giving myself time to grieve, and everyone grieves differently. And mine was denial initially, like, and why me? I'm an identical twin like yourself. Like, why not my brother? Like, he was a rat bag more than me. Like, he was always partying and got worse grades and always in trouble. But, happened to me, like, why? Just couldn't understand it, I suppose. And then, I think friends and family definitely helped a lot. Like, just being around me and trying to keep me informed with the social life that was happening without me. And then really sort of weeding out my true friends who would come in and, after the novelty wore off over the first month or so, those that would still come in and hang out and spend time with me and help me out. And I just started to slowly but surely just feel a bit more like myself. And then with the physiotherapy, the rehab, all that kind of thing, that what seemed like, something I could never achieve, like to be independent again, I guess was the ultimate goal at that age. Slowly, started chipping away. And I think a bit of that was the hospital system. Like, they've got people that come in to help you identify and see these goals. And, to you, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone and there's no way out. But they've all seen people in similar situations get through it. Unfortunately, I didn't get anyone like a mentor or anyone inspirational I saw who had an amputee like me who got through or anything like that. So couldn't see the finished product. I had to kind of internally start to just think about, all right, well, you're still you, like, and just embrace the challenge, I suppose. It's like I've always never shied away from a challenge. I like challenging things and problem solving. It was just, how do I now sort of do that internally to myself and then get to a point where I want to get to? And one of the biggest things I think I mentioned before, I didn't identify as being sick, frail, that kind of thing like this. I was down to like 40 kilos, just pale, pasty, skin and bone. And I was like, no, I need to change that. So that was something I could change over time with physiotherapy, with weights, with, my rehabilitation is starting to get some muscle mass, and starting to actually look like Chris that I knew. And I was like, once I started that, I was like, okay, well, it's coming back to you now. I can still be that cheeky bugger. And, from there I was like, all right, well, now what? I've hit that. What's next? And that was to get out of the hospital system and become independent in the real world.
And so for those who might not have actually seen the impact of the surgery and what happened to you, are you able to explain physically what your body underwent?
Yeah. So that original, when I went into septic shock, essentially what that is, the body starts to shut down, and it's the last mode of survival for the human body. So it gives your brain, your blood goes to your vital organs, and is drawn from your extremities to keep you alive in that last sort of instant. So essentially what happened is, my body started to shut down from the outside in, and then I did survive. I kicked on, but the length of time that there was no circulation in my extremities, they started to go gangrenous. So your listeners might have seen like frostbite and things like that on movies. And it's like your body starts to go black, almost like a gargoyle, like stone. It's cold to touch, that kind of thing. And that's just poison essentially in your body. And so, yeah, unfortunately that can't last forever. It's poison. It needs to be removed. So yeah, once I was strong enough and the swelling had gone down, as my body swelled up a lot through the infection. Once that had sort of come down and they were able to debride bits and pieces, and they were kind of left with, all right, it's time to make some cuts here. They didn't want to cut too early, but yeah, I lost both my legs below my knee, my left hand, and most of my fingers on my right hand had to be removed and amputated. So yeah, they did my hands first, and then 2 weeks later they did the legs. Yeah.
And how is that whole process for you? I feel like, especially at that age in our teenage years, we associate a lot of our about our physical appearance and what we present, how we present ourselves to the world. What was going through your mind when you realized that was the outcome for you?
Yeah, it was pretty rough. Like initially they kind of, whether they were trying to calm me down or whether they're like, oh, no, like you can walk on dead legs and stuff like this. And there's a chance you might keep your legs and that kind of thing. And like, okay. And then like later on, they're like, no, like they have to go. And I remember the doctor walked in to the family, and he just had a piece of paper and he's like, this is what you look like. And he drew a stick figure, and I just broke down crying. I couldn't picture me, like this athletic guy, reduced in my mind at the time, like to something like that. I didn't have much or any experience with the disability community or anything apart from what the sort of shovel down your throat at the time of, just in the corner, don't talk to them. They're not valuable members of society. So I just thought that, yeah, that was the end of my life as I knew it. And it was, but, ultimately probably should have better actually achieved more now than I ever had before. But, yeah, I remember it was pretty rough at the time. Yeah, lots of time, which is the beauty. I had plenty of time just sitting there to think about it, but, it took a long time to get over that. And then even when they did it, I was in a pretty bad mood for a long time. Yeah. And I think that's probably a pretty natural response for most people, and especially at that age. And I see a lot of people in similar journeys take a while to actually come to realization and understanding, and until they can actually move on with their lives.
100%. You touched on something really beautiful before by saying you didn't identify with the person that you were becoming. And I think that's so important for people to understand too, is your physical body is essentially the vehicle that you move through this earth in. It's not who you are. It doesn't have to define you. And I think that's something I really appreciate you sharing, is the fact that you could actually see your body for whatever you wanted to see it as, and you chose to see it in a really empowering way. A lot of people see things that happen to them, late major life events, as maybe something that holds them back, or it shapes them and limits them moving forward. It seems like it really empowered you to step into a whole new world. How did that moment do that for you?
Yeah, I think, again, like doing my rehabilitation journey and getting stronger and stronger, and then becoming independent, like learning how to walk, driving for the first time, going from electric chair to a manual chair, these kinds of things. I was like, well, where's the ceiling? And I've got time now to push that and see where that goes. And let's see what this body can do, and I'd always loved sport, and I'd always wanted to represent Australian sport. I was good at a lot of sports, but not excellent at one that I was really passionate about. And, I was in the ACT Academy of Sport for cycling growing up, and I went to Arendelle College for a talented sports program, that kind of thing. I never really found my sport. And I guess I was like, all right, well, this is just a different avenue in, Paralympic sport. What's that? Like, I've still got a lot to offer in that field in terms of being an athlete. I was an athlete prior. Maybe I got an advantage. I don't know how many other athletes and now have, are amputees, and let's see what sports are on offer there. So, yeah, I think for me, it was just like, all right, let's try and move on, baby steps. But the next step was, let's get back to something you enjoyed doing, which was playing sport and you were good at. And let's try it in this new vehicle, as you said. And see where that gets you. And I found out the ceiling was pretty high in terms of where it can get you. And the pathway was tough, as it should be. But yeah, eventually I found my sport of wheelchair rugby, and yeah, done some pretty incredible things. and ultimately, traveling the world doing something I love with a bunch of mates that I would call family. So yeah, not a bad way to end a pretty horrible situation.
And I told you I did some YouTube stalking of like 6-year-old videos of yourself back in the Queensland Academy days in the gym. And I can testify that the things that you can achieve with your physical body are more than a lot of able-bodied people I know can achieve. You set yourself the challenge to do something really incredible in your sport, and you've definitely done that. So I'd love to dive into a bit more of your sporting journey and success here. Which sport did you end up starting in? Because it wasn't wheelchair rugby.
No. So, I went through the rehabilitation centre in Canberra Hospital there. And I was training with, 80-year-old mates. We'd have a cup of tea and a bicky, and, we're doing our 1 kilo, bench press. And we're like, come on, guys, this isn't, I'm beyond this now. I need more. Like I've outgrown that sort of environment. Need to get with people my own age now, out of the hospital system. And, being in Canberra, the Australian Institute of Sport is not far away. So they teamed me up with someone from there, and I started going to the gym there, just socially. And then, they managed to set me up with a coach in swimming. So I didn't do any talent ID or anything, and there wasn't too much knowledge of like classification and what sports I could do. And I didn't know much or anything about Paralympic sport. So they said swimming was the only sport I'd be able to do competitively or with a pathway to, Paralympics. So I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a go. I'd never really liked swimming that much. Like I was more of a runner or a contact or a team sport kind of guy, but yeah, I'll give it a go. I don't know about you, Miff, but the Canberra winter mornings, so 5 a.m. down at the pool, not very fun if you're not already passionate about it. So it didn't last too long, but I'm very stubborn in nature, which probably makes me a good athlete, very competitive. So I stuck with it for a bit. And then, I was at the gym at the AOS one day, and the coach of the National Wheelchair Rugby Team rolled in and just kind of came over and he's like, oh, g'day, my name's Brad, who are you or what are you doing? And I said, my name's Chris. I'm from Canberra. I'm doing swimming. And he said, you're from rugby? He's like, well, I said, great. I played rugby league growing up for, 7 years, and I loved it. Did, rugby union as well, like lots of different sports. I'd love to have a look or come and try. And it just so happened that later that year they were holding a camp in Canberra at the LAS with the Australian Steelers, the rugby team. So I just was an invite, went along, and I was just, from the second I saw them all there, like crashing into each other, they were doing some testing, and I was like, wow, that's incredible, like what they could do in a chair, like how fast they could maneuver, the agility. I was like, well, yeah, this is like piqued my interest. And then they got me in a chair and just said, go and smash into that bloke at the other end of the court. So yeah, I jumped in. I was a bit timid. I was like, oh, these big burly guys they're gonna own me. But yeah, crashed into this guy, turned around, and he smiled at me, and I haven't looked back since. Yeah, I've just chomped at the bit and seized every opportunity to fast track myself as quickly as possible.
And so where has that journey from that moment led you now? You've obviously gone on to achieve some really incredible things in the sport. What have been some of those achievements?
Yeah, so from that was 2010, I think I did that camp, and then the London Paralympic Games in 2012 were up and coming. And yeah, they very much fast tracked me. They're like, all right, you like rugby? Let's give it a go. Managed to get some funding to get a chair, because it's not very cheap to be involved. There's a lot of setup fees. So managed to get that, which was, removed one barrier, I suppose. And then the rest was, all right, I've got to learn this brand new sport. So getting my chair fitness up was probably the hardest thing at the start. It's a lot harder than it looks to maneuver a chair, let alone have the strength to push it for a long period of time. And then as a contact sport, so you got guys actually tying you up. So you actually got to push them off you and then go again. And so it just took a long time to build my strength, my fitness up. And at the same time, slowly like learning the game, learning the rules, the tactics. And then, slowly being introduced into like the Australian program and the setup. So going to some training camps with the guys, getting to know everyone, a few test events here and there. And then, I got selected within the first 12 months to represent Australia. And I got my first tournament over in Wales, which we won, which was awesome. And then, I just had the bug, and I didn't play that much. Like I was off the bench, but the when I didn't do too bad. I was like, all right, I've got some confidence here. And I had a very real goal and a very clear sense of purpose. I think it was the first time after, my diagnosis and coming out of the hospital system that, I'm actually can be valuable somewhere. I'm just going to do everything I can to be there. So, the next, I suppose, 12 months leading into the games, I just continued as hard as I could in my training. The coach said, if you're serious, you need to move to one of the training hubs. So I packed everything I had in my Holden Commodore with my dog, and I just drove from Canberra to Queensland. First time I moved out of home, all that kind of thing. It was all a bit scary with my new acquired disability and everything, and mum didn't want me to go and all that, but it was just the things I had to sacrifice to chase my dream. And when I got there, it all worked out, and I was training extra hard and managed to make the team for London, and very proud moment. Wheeling out to the 100,000 fans and the Queen at the time and all that. And then we actually, got the job done, and we went, undefeated throughout the tournament and won a gold medal, which is probably came very early. Like a lot of people spend their whole careers chasing gold medals, and I got mine, my debut sort of year with the team, which was pretty special. And a lot of those guys probably meant a lot more to them, had they been struggling for a while, than me just up and coming, but it sort of ticked a goal. And then I just got hooked on success, really, and the sport. And so, from that little period, we went on to then win the World Championship for the first time 2 years after. And then 2 years after that, back-to-back Paralympic gold medals, first time any country's ever done that. And since then, we came very close after that 2 years in Sydney, winning silver at the World Champs. Tokyo wasn't that great with COVID affected. But then recently, last year, I was named captain of the team, and were lucky enough to win the World Championship 10 years after I won my first gold medal. So that's pretty special. Not many athletes can, in 10 years span, be successful. So that was very special to me. And in particular now, as the captain, it was this extra sense of accomplishment as I'm a father as well, Miff, and it was always almost similar. Like, it's like my kids have done well, my team's done well. I've contributed on the court, but then off the court, some of the things I've built in the leadership culture, values have really sort of helped us to achieve success. So, and look, I'm 37 this year. So in athlete terms, getting on a fair bit. Been doing this for over a decade now, but my ultimate goal is Paris Paralympics next year. And that'll probably be my last one when I retire. So I want to go out on top and give it everything I've got.
That's incredible. And you touched on a really great point there. It's really hard to stay competitive in a sport for a period of 10 years, let alone at the peak of the sport. So that's an incredible achievement in itself. And you mentioned that with the World Championship, you having that leadership role. I'm interested to hear a bit more about that. You're probably one of the most highest functioning people in that team. How do you go about leading such a diverse range of people and working towards a common goal?
Yeah, it's pretty tricky. Like, our sport is very diverse. So we've got athletes that are quite low functioning, like spinal cord injuries, quadriplegics, who play a very key role in our sport. And then athletes such as myself, who everyone on the street would think are very impaired, but in terms of like function, I've got full core strength, trunk, not impaired nerves, spine or anything. We're the highest functioning athletes, and we've all play a role in the team. And I think it's important to understand that in the team. Like, myself or the other sort of high functioning athletes might score all the tries and have the highlight reels and, be defending 2 or 3 people, but I can't do my job without my low pointers on court doing their job. And I can't even get on the court without my low pointers on there. So, I think my leadership stemmed, so we sort of jumped a bit after I came out of the hospital system. I joined an organization called Canteen, which is an organization for young people living with cancer. And that's all about youth empowerment and peer support. So I spent a lot of my time doing activities with Canteen, and then being on the local division committee, to then being on the member advisory council nationally, and then actually sitting on the board of directors and national vice president. So I had a lot of experience in leadership, I suppose, from a national organization of thousands of young people coming together. And again, it was quite similar. I had different stakeholder groups of like patient members, someone who's had cancer, and then sibling members, someone who's brother or sister, and then, or mum and dad, and then like bereaved that mum and dad had passed away. And you've got all these different little groups who coming together through similar experiences, but not exactly the same. It's about learning like peer support, but sort of tolerance around, I have no idea how it would be like for someone like a 14-year-old girl lost both their parents to cancer and she's suddenly the mum of the family to 3 of her siblings. That's awful. But then she had no experience of going in a hospital system, losing her independence and that kind of thing. So I think it just built like a mutual understanding that, and this is very common in life, that there's always someone worse out than you. That's a cliche, but it's so true. Like, and initially I thought I was the worst thing that ever happened. And then I started to meet other people with disabilities, like less function than me. I'm like, oh, wow, you've got less function and you're doing more in your life than me. And that's true inspiration, I think. And I guess that's where my leadership comes. I've got lowest functioning guys, but they're busting their ass as hard as I can. They might not look like they're pushing it on court, but they've got a role to play, and everyone in the team's got a role to play, from athletes, coaches, support staff. And I guess I've got experience in my life from other industry, other areas that I've been able to bring into our team and our sport.
I love how you mentioned that everyone has a role to play, and I think that's really relevant to a whole bunch of different group environments. Is everyone has something to offer, and if you can't see that, that's on you. You need to do the work to be able to understand exactly why this person here and what value they can contribute. I think that's really powerful to understand. And if we go back to at the start of the conversation, you mentioned that potentially when you're that 17, 18-year-old looking at people in the part of the disability community, you might have thought they were sort of part of the community that's shoved aside. What's your attitude towards that part of the community nowadays, and what do you hope for that segment of the community in this world moving forward? Yeah,
so I'd never had any connection to someone with a lived disability growing up. I just never had. Like, no one in our family had a disability. None of my friendship groups, there weren't many at my school, so just didn't have any exposure. But now I've got a lot of exposure. I guess being a Paralympic athlete in the sporting world has allowed me to meet a lot of different people in a lot of different sports, a lot of different function. And I think, end of the day, to be honest, people are just people. Like, humans are humans. I think that's the biggest thing I can pull from it, is that, no matter, and you touched on before, like, your body's your vehicle. How someone sounds, looks, speaks like, or what their body looks like, it's never who they are. And most people will just never give people a chance. But I think end of the day, people are just people generally trying to do their best. It's definitely opened my eyes that, we definitely shouldn't discriminate based on looks. I mean, that's pretty dumb, but I'll definitely give people time of day, regardless of what they look like. More so now than I ever would have growing up, for sure.
And what's some advice that you could give someone else who might have been like ourselves? I mean, you hope that no one that you know goes through hardship or suffers some sort of disability. I say that in the most respectful way possible. I think with some disabilities come some extra challenges in life, and you don't want to see your friends and loved ones challenged and suffering. I think that's just your human nature. But what would be your advice to someone who's looking to be more inclusive and to open their mind and a bit more accepting of the different populations in this world? What would be your advice to them about how they could go about doing that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's just about listening. To people might have different needs, but it might not be as hard as you might think it will be. And generally, I know people with a physical disability, generally they know what's best for them, right? Like, if they've been dealing with it, they know what they need in their life. It's just around waiting until they've sort of reached out to help you, I think, is a big one. Like, a lot of people might sort of overdo it in terms of wanting to help out, which is generally not very helpful sometimes. So, I think it's just, again, trying to treat others as equals, and not so much how you would want to be treated, but, how someone else would want to be treated. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's the biggest thing, is just listening to someone and what they might need, and then being open and inclusive in thinking outside the box in terms of what you do. So, let's keep in the sporting realm. Like, if there's someone with a, high needs comes into wheelchair rugby, but they can't play, well, all right, we'll chuck you on the score bench, mate. You can, count the clock, or, do you mind washing the jerseys? Just some way to be involved. There's always a way to be involved in something. It doesn't always have to be on the court or particularly, in the office or on the team. But there's always a way someone can contribute and be a part of it and get something out of it. And then I know from a lot of people generally get a lot out of being with people with a disability, whether that's just the subconscious inspiration or motivation that, somehow I motivate people just by going to the shops. I don't do it on purpose, but just me going and doing it. People always coming up to me, oh, you're so inspirational. Like, am I? Like, I'm literally just getting milk. But there's something to offer. Like, you don't know who's going to perceive that or who's going to see that and then go and, adjust their day accordingly or change something, or they might give you inspiration to do something uncomfortable. You just never know. So there's value all around, I think.
And a couple of things on that. You don't see yourself going to get milk as inspirational. What do you see as inspirational?
Yeah, for me, if I see as inspirational in myself, and I guess the things that I'm proud of in myself and my accomplishments, yes, like my sporting career has been highly decorated and I'm proud of that. But, I'm a father of two. And that's a really interesting shift because I've gone from completely independent, 19, completely dependent in hospital, completely independent again, post-hospital, to now having a dependent or two dependents, which is completely different and very, very challenging. So when I see other people with disabilities who are parents, I find that very inspiring because I know how tough it is. And that's the kind of inspiration I love to share. Like when I'm with my kids, getting milk and it's me and them, I'm hustling in the car and, my daughter's lost her shoe and she wants to be carried and she wants to be in the trolley and you're doing all this while trying to hold milk, bread, apples in one hand and you got your one finger to pay on the thing and you're carrying the kids. Like to me, that's inspiration. It's like, well, because I never thought I'd be there, that was always like, that was the light that closed in hospital. It's like, you'll never be a dad. You'll never be all these dreams, that you had would never come true. And it couldn't see it. It was pitch black. But then slowly that light sort of opened up. And now it's like, well, yeah, there's nothing holding me back. There's no limits except for what I want to do, really, and just small steps towards it. So for me, that's inspiration. I think people going out there and just doing their best in their field or just having a go, like having a real go and trying and working hard towards something and being unwavering in that, I think to me is very inspirational, regardless of race, gender, who you are, how much you own.
That's incredible. There's nothing I could possibly add to that. I think that's a mic drop moment there. That's absolutely beautiful. And going back slightly just to when you mentioned about the different roles people can have in a team, it got me thinking about what you mentioned earlier on about having small goals and how that helped to move you through the mental challenges you were having post-operation. And so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how important is goal setting or having goals and having a sense of purpose to the human spirit?
Definitely very important. Goal setting is essential, and it doesn't even need to be grand gold medal goals. But like me and my partner, every week we'll sit down with our diaries and we'll plan our week. I mean, that is a form of goal setting. It's like, this is what we want to achieve in our week. Here's how we're going to do it. And then we sort of have, some larger goals, personal goals within our own family. And then, for myself, I've got some big goals, which are not mine, but shared as part of a team too. And then it's around communicating that and bringing that group of people together for a common cause, because that's why we're all in the room, right? To achieve some similar goals. And the beauty is we're all doing it together, which makes it extra special when it comes off. In terms of purpose for the human spirit, I think it's essential. And I think personally, it's why there's such a high rate of mental health issues and depression, is that losing that sense of purpose, people struggling to find it. And I knew as a young person, I kind of couldn't find it. As I said, I was taking that gap year. I didn't know where I was going to go do with my life. And there's so much pressure all through school. What are you going to do? But I guess luckily for me, I was sort of lucky and unlucky. I was put in a situation where life kind of took me in a direction, and I kind of followed it for a bit, and then sort of veered off and gave me a bit more clarity and some areas to try. So yeah, I guess my advice on that is just try a few things. Like, life is pretty short, but at the same time, it's pretty long. Like, I know people who have changed careers in their 30s and 40s and excelled. Like, you feel like that window might be over, but it's not really. Like, just, give things a go, and say more yeses than nos, I think, has helped me in my life to become the person I am, and then find a pathway to achieve the things I have.
And so if someone's sitting here going, cool, I need to set a goal, what's a really actionable step someone could do in the next 24 to 48 hours to set a really motivating goal for themselves?
Yeah, I think, like, when I talk to my team, a lot of things I'll say is like, why are you here? Like, why do you care about this so much? It's probably no different. It's really just taking that time to reflect, and whether that's in a couple or in a team or by yourself, and just really understand yourself. Like, what do you like? Like, what do you want to achieve? And I think that's the start. That's a very actionable thing you can do. Go and do that. Write some things on paper, and then go to sleep. And then wake up the next morning, reread it. Is it the same? Is there something you missed? Yep. Once you've agreed on that, I think that's the sticking point. That's that, like, okay, cool, I've got something cemented. Now it's, what are my objectives to get there? And I think, and that can be ideally for me, it's starting large. So ours is obviously be the best team in the world, win a gold medal, and then breaking that down into, all right, what are the steps we need to do? 12 months, 6 months, everyday training, to do that. And then, and then get the buy-in from everyone to be on the same page and be as hungry to do that as I would be. So I'm not sure if that helps, but that's kind of how I look at it systematically.
Definitely, you touched on a really great point there. And what gets you out of bed on those 5 a.m. mornings might not be swimming, but it's the reason why you might go swimming. So I think it's really important to connect with your why, because motivation wavers. It's not consistent. Discipline you can rely on a lot, but if you simply rely on discipline, you'll likely be very miserable in the pursuit of anything that you do. So it's having a really strong connection to your why, having that bit of discipline as well to actually execute the steps, but also knowing really clearly what those action steps are, to your point, to start with the big vision and then tailor back from there. So to finish this off, I would love to hear from you. Obviously, Paris 2024 is a big goal that you're working towards. What's another goal that you're working towards at the moment? Yeah,
so taking it back to dad mode again, I think it's just trying to be the best father I can be for my kids and being more involved in their lives. So I know, last year I was sort of working full-time in an executive role. I was captain of the team. I was coaching our state team, and I was volunteering on boards and advisory groups for different areas of sport and industry. And I was out like 6 a.m, getting home at 10 p.m. and just like not seeing our kids. And unfortunately, like my youngest son, he's a twin. We lost his brother, and never really truly grieved properly, I don't think. And as a family, and I just sort of hit this year and just went, I've got to stop like doing this. I did to reset a little bit and think about my priorities, and like rugby and my role in that was definitely a priority. My family, number one, and everything else was sort of fell to the wayside. And once I think I realized and stopped, I was like, all right, well, they're the areas, and my goal for this year is to really get better in that area of being a dad and being there and being around the kids and helping my partner. And she goes back to work after a little one done with maternity leave. And for me, that has meant we've set our diaries. So we've got one day where they're out of daycare all together. We do, family activities. I'll make sure I get up in the morning, get them to daycare, do the drop-offs, pick them up, get them fed, all the basic dad stuff, which sounds pretty boring and mundane to most people. But I guess to me, that's my goal, to get more effective at that. And then we're almost hitting that beautiful age where they can get into sports, and I'm just really, really keen to be that proud dad who's put some duct tape over my mouth because I'll be screaming from the sideline, but just to impart my knowledge in sport and really just see my kids enjoy sport as much as I did. And I really want to make sure that I'm fit enough, healthy enough, and have carved out time to be able to do that with my kids.
How wonderful. And I think you touched on a really good point there as well. Work takes up a lot of our time, and I think it's important in that aspect, but there's so many more areas to your life. And sometimes if you don't take the opportunity to press pause and reevaluate your values and what's important to you, sometimes it happens by some other external factor. And I think regardless of how it happens, it's really important that you make the time to check in about what's important to you, because it can change as your life situation changes too. And it's really beautiful to hear that you've acknowledged that wheelchair rugby is still very much important to you, but you have this beautiful other area of your life that's also important to you, and seeing you navigate both is very inspirational.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Chris, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today. And thank you so much for sharing your story and all of your experience with us. I so appreciate it.
No, thanks, Smith. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I so enjoy having you here, and I hope you've taken away powerful insights and tools that will support you to achieve your high-level results. Now, before you go apply all this wisdom in your life, I would be so grateful if you are able to leave us a podcast review on the platform that you're listening to, or share this episode with a friend. Your support means that we can help more self-led, high-performing individuals just like you expand what's possible for them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please go on and shoot me a note on socials and let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram as Miff Galloway. Now, go and make those dreams a reality, because actually, you can. Speak to you soon.